Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with the legitimist Charles Coulombe.
Legitimist, as in a sort of romantic upholder of hereditary lost causes.
Yes.
Jacobites and Carlists and Miguelists and all those kinds of guys. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Is that what you're accusing me of?
Accusing you, yes.
Okay. All right.
What do you have to say for yourself?
Well,
are you going to apologize?
I ain't apologizing for nothing. That would be a bozo no-no. I ain't apologizing for nothing, son. No. I forget it. I'm not apologizing. We've only begun to fight. We legitimists, I'll tell you what, if you put us all together, there may be 700 of us. But let me tell you, we would really do something to somebody or other at some point, sometime, soon. And that is not a bozo no-no.
Wow. Okay, well, we'll stay tuned for that.
I think you should. and this week, on Bozo the Clown. No. Speaking of Bozo the Clown, more importantly, we need to share with our studio audience that today, the day on which we're doing this in real time, it is the 17th of September. And you know what that means.
What does that mean?
It means several things. Firstly, in 2022, it is Embertide in Michaelmas Saturday. That means that. So we're the last of the Ember days for this quarter.
Of course. I should have known.
You should have. Pray for the harvest.
Okay.
That's right. You want to eat, don't you?
I do. I like eating. Yeah.
Me too. Pray for the harvest. Remember, you should always pray for the crops and Ember days, and do penance and fast and abstain from meat and so forth. Now, wait, there's more. Today are two important feast days in the church.
Who?
Well, there's the Stigmata of St. Francis, the first recorded incident of the Stigmata in the church. So Padre Pio, Teresa Neumann, Little Rose Ferrand, all those folks, they're in a sense taking after St. Francis.
Do stigmatas have to be like officially approved? I mean, you know what I mean? Like where there's no scientific explanation?
To be venerated, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, now, interesting story. I mentioned Teresa Neumann and Little Rose Ferrand. Little Rose lived in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. She was a French-Canadian girl. Teresa Neumann lived in Bavaria. Well, I don't remember now if it was somebody from Rhode Island who went to Bavaria or vice versa. But one person was visiting the one stigmatic who could not possibly have known about the other, and said, "Give my regards too."
Wow.
That's pretty weird.
That's really weird.
Stigmatic Central. So apparently there's some sort of... I'm speaking glibly of it, but it is a very strange phenomenon, and one that, as I say, St. Francis was the first to have it. The second feast day is St. Hildegard of Bingen. And she, of course, was she's now a doctor of the church, but she wrote a great deal about a great many things, and was one of the most remarkable women of the Middle Ages. But it's also two wonderful holidays on our secular calendar.
Oh, yeah? What?
Well, the first is Constitution Day. Celebrating our Constitution.
Beautiful. It just occurred to me, there's so many random days on the calendar, like, that people know about. Like, for example, my wife knows about, what is it? Today's National Dance Day, apparently.
National what day?
Dancing, like dancing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What did you do? Did you go dancing?
Well, not yet. It's still in the morning for me, but
Well,
it's interesting. People know all these things, but we don't know Constitution Day or Law Day.
well, it is. It's also the beginning of Constitution Week, and and it's also Law Day.
Yeah.
Now, because it's the beginning of because it actually, you know what it says here? Interestingly, observed on the previous Friday if it falls on a Saturday. Oh wow, we're losers. Forget it. We messed up. You know.
That's sad.
Yeah, yeah. All over. Forget it. Never mind.
What does the government
But
do for Law Day or Constitution Day? Is there any sort of ritual?
no, yeah, you read the Constitution and be glad you've got it.
Oh, okay. Great.
Well, I mean, for what it is, the Constitution really is a remarkable document.
Who created Constitution Day? Like what president?
I think it was Eisenhower, but let's see to make sure I know what I'm talking about. I love it when that happens. You know what? It's not Law Day today. It's Citizenship Day.
Citizenship Day.
Citizenship Day. And indeed, well, this is interesting. This is a Wikipedia source of all truth. Constitution Day or Citizenship Day is an American federal observance that recognizes the adoption of the United States Constitution and those who become U.S. citizens. It is normally observed on September 17th, the day in 1787. The delegates to the Constitutional Convention signed the document in Philadelphia. The law establishing the present holiday was created in 2004 with the passage of an amendment by Senator Robert Byrd to the Omnibus Spending Bill of 2004. Now, Robert Byrd was a Democrat, so don't get excited. Before this law was enacted, the holiday was known as Citizenship Day and celebrated on the third Sunday in May. In addition to renaming the holiday Constitution Day and Citizenship Day, the act mandates that all publicly funded educational institutions and all federal agencies provide educational programming on the history of the American Constitution on that day. In May 2005, the United States Department of Education announced the enactment of this law and that it would apply to any school receiving federal funds of any kind. Now, origins. Here's where it gets really exciting. Iowa schools first recognized Constitution Day in 1911. In 1917, the Sons of the American Revolution formed a committee to promote Constitution Day. The committee included members such as Calvin Coolidge, John D. Rockefeller, and General John Pershing. I Am an American Day. This day was inspired by Arthur Pine, the head of a publicity public relations firm in New York City bearing his name. At the New York World's Fair, the writers of a new song called I Am an American brought their manuscript to the attention of Arthur Pine, who handled publicity for the band leader, Gray Gordon, and a music publisher. Arthur Pine had the song introduced on NBC, Mutual, and ABC by the orchestra leader, arranged for an I Am an American Day at the 1939 New York World's Fair, and had a local New York newspaper tie in with I Am an American Day in the city. The promotion proved so successful that a newspaper chain promoted I Am an American Day on a nationwide basis and had President Roosevelt name it as an official day. Wow.
Thrilling.
In 1939, what's that?
Thrilling.
Well, it's not thrilling to you. It is to me. It goes on, but I'm thrilled. William Randolph Hearst got into it, and it's a big deal. Triumph of advertising. I love it. The business of America is business. Calvin Coolidge said that, and he was on the Sons of the American Revolution committee that first promoted Constitution Day in 1917. So it's Constitution Day and Citizenship Day. It's Law Days with Loyalty Day. That's what it is. Those are two other days that are one day. So how do you celebrate? Well, first check your passport. Make sure you're a citizen. If you are, buy yourself a beer. Make sure it's an American beer. Like Budweiser or Guinness or something. And then
Guinness is okay. Whatever. Whatever.
whatever,
Doesn't matter. Yeah,
have a
Budweiser or
bottle of
Guinness or
have a bottle
Heineken
of
or
Dom Perignon
Singha.
champagne or something.
Okay.
Maybe a little tequila, some sake, Centauri whiskey from Japan, whatever. Anyhow, celebrate with some really American drink like that. And having checked your passport and drunk your American booze, pumpkin beer this time of year, that's really American, and nobody else should be silly. I mean, nobody else makes it. So have yourself some pumpkin beer, look at your passport, and then read the Constitution. And bear in mind an important thing. Whatever its defects, the Constitution of the United States allowed Catholics to proselytize. The fact that they did not was on us and not on our government or our fellow citizens. And there are things about the Constitution I really like, to be honest with you. Elements of it I like. In fact, the two parts of the Constitution I like the best. Can you guess what they are?
Oh, states' rights.
Sorry?
The let's see.
We'll set the Bill of Rights aside.
No, I said states' rights.
States' rights. Well, yeah, as expressed in two particular organs of governance.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't guess.
All right, fine. What is the one college you know where there's no classes?
The one college I know where there's no classes.
And you don't require any kind of education to be accepted.
Clown College?
Very close. This is actually quite close to Clown College. Very close. Very, very close.
I don't know, Charles.
The Electoral College.
Oh, oh man, I was.
You were that close, but no cigar. No, I despite making fun of it, the Electoral College is one of my favorite parts of the Constitution because it's a remnant of reality. In that the electors appointed by the states were the ones who were intended to be the ones who chose the president. He was not initially to be popularly elected. And even under our debased, degraded, and somewhat ripped down system, the Electoral College allow the non-California, New York, Texas, Florida, whatever the fifth state is, to dominate. In other words, because of the Electoral College, every 4 years, the national candidates have to pretend they care about flyover country. They don't really, of course, but they have to get out there to Iowa and Michigan and Nevada, and, places like that, pretend they care. Illinois, that's the fifth state. But the rest of them, of course, don't really matter. But thanks to the Electoral College, every 4 years, we have to pretend they do. And I think that's good. The second thing I love most about the Constitution has similarly been dumbed down and broken, but was great as it was designed. And that was the Senate of these United States, or those United States, given that I'm in Austria. And the original Senate was chosen by the state governments, elected by the state legislatures, depending on how the given state wanted to do it. And that was the way until 1912, and they produced a much higher type of statesman than the House of Representatives did. Not only that, but they were both answerable to the state government and able to turn to the state government for support. They were, all in all, they were a higher caliber of people. I mean, can you imagine when the Senate had, and these guys were often opposed to each other, but it's not their positions I'm talking about, just who they were as statesmen. Daniel Webster, John C. Calhoun, and Henry Clay.
Oh man, those guys are all throughout Puritan's Empire. Remember those guys?
Yeah, they were great figures.
Yeah.
Love them or hate them, agree with them or disagree with them, and of course, the three of them would align and oppose each other, depending on the given issue and what they felt their state needed. So sometimes Webster and Calhoun would gang up on Clay, sometimes Clay and Calhoun on Webster, sometimes Clay and Webster on Calhoun. But it was all pursuing the interests of their respective states. And, after 1912, the Senate became like the House of Representatives, except that it's almost impossible to actually recall a senator. And he's not really answerable to anybody. And so we get, Senator Teddy Kennedy.
All right.
But wait, there's more.
Okay.
Citizenship Day. How proud are you of your United States citizenship?
I'm pretty proud. I'm proud to be.
You should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Remember, that blue passport you wield with the eagle on it, that brings you all sorts of benefits when you're overseas. You know how I know?
How?
Because I'm overseas. And I'll tell you what. You wave that blue passport around, the gods of the Gentiles bow.
Is that what happened at Ukraine?
Not exactly. No, actually, because we are supporting because our government is supporting Ukraine, being an American was a comfortable thing to be there. I doubt highly it would be quite the same in Russia right now. I mean, not that I blame the Russians for not being particularly happy with us at the moment, but it's the way things are.
Yeah. Okay.
One of the unexpected results of their being bogged down in Ukraine was Azerbaijan's attack on Armenia this week.
We'll get to that later. We have a question on that.
All right. I won't say any more about that. We'll get there when we get to it.
Yes.
All right. So what do we got?
Well, we've got some memes, Charles. Are you ready for the memes of production?
Nationalize the memes of production
for the common good.
All right. What do we got?
All right. Couple comments. One from Connor. He says, "Is it time already for the monthly trip to Biarritz, or is it Monte Carlo? I can never remember which one you prefer in the summer." Meanwhile, the staff
Monte Carlo, Monte Carlo,
yeah. Meanwhile, the staff at Tumblr have been eating month-old mackerel and haven't had enough money for a vacation in almost a decade, even if they pooled their income together.
That's not true. As soon as the mackerel runs out, they estivate. What?
Yes, they estivate.
They estivate. That's why you have all these weird-looking cocoons, hanging from the ceiling or in a closet.
I just don't like you mentioning it because it feels like discrimination to me.
What? Discrimination against? You're saying that interspecies discrimination is a BOZO no-no.
Yes, I'm saying it's a BOZO no-no.
Okay. Well, we wouldn't want to do a BOZO no-no on this show. And we'll never say the C word.
That's right. Okay.
You know the C word.
What?
What was the response to a BOZO no? That's a BOZO no-no.
Cram it, Clowny?
Yeah, you said the C word. Don't say the C word.
Okay, well, you asked me to say it, so I said it. I'm sorry.
Would you jump off a bridge if I told you to?
Yes, because... Yes. What? Okay.
All right, well, okay.
Yes, I would. I would. Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm so trusting of you, Charles.
That's it. You talk about the burden of responsibility that's just fallen on my shoulders. I don't know how I'm supposed to live with this. It's kind of like having a tribble in your hand. You've got to be very careful and keep it away from grain. But wow. So if I said jump off a bridge, you'd do it. What if someone warned you that that was a bozo no-no?
I don't know. I don't know these. I'm not good with these hypotheticals. All right.
You're no abstract thinker. I
I'll
get
leave
that.
that to St. Thomas Aquinas, okay?
Ooh,
Um,
okay.
I'll let him decide what's a bozo no-no and what isn't a bozo no-no.
I never saw a bozo no-no in the Summa, and I've studied the Summa. There's no bozo no-nos in there. There are a lot of bozos in Washington, but nobody says no-no to them.
All right. Helvicio says, watching some old pre-show episodes gave me the inspiration for another question. This one for
Okay.
you, Vincenzo. Would you prefer Slovakian Christmas carp or fillet of guinea pig sautéed in wine and butter sauce, served with Chateau Montelena Chardonnay? The carp comes with Sprite.
Well, I think part of the question is, what do you want to hear in your bathtub?
I would say the guinea pig.
You want to hear the guinea pig swimming around in the bathtub?
I would prefer I guess why do I have to keep the guinea pig in a bathtub?
That's where you keep the carp.
Okay, fine. We'll keep the guinea pig in the bathtub until we murder it and eat it.
Just one guinea pig, or would you have several for guests?
I feel like we'd have several for guests.
So you got like 7 or 8 guinea pigs in your tub.
Yeah.
So would you keep it dry or let them swim?
I'd probably I'd be curious to see if they could swim. I wonder what would happen.
I don't know. Of course, that would depend on how much water was in the tub. You know, it was just a little bit. They could just flop in their heads. But if they couldn't reach bottom, they'd have to swim or drown.
But yeah, I would definitely eat the guinea pig. Carp with Sprite, not so much. All right. We've got an actual.
No.
That's a bozo no. All right. We've got a proper meme from Daniel, who gave us something. So it says, when a big family goes to church, stop, we have to turn around. What on earth is the matter? I forgot my right shoe. Sounds about right. I could totally see that. You know, the big families, you know, with the special vans, like the special homeschooler vans.
Yeah, I know. My brother and sister-in-law and my 10 nieces and nephews were that. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
I think, ladies and gentlemen, I was about to say I think big families are the future, but of course they are by definition.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I've always said, like, if any of you Grimms are watching, but you know, if there's hope in anything, it's hope in the hope in the Grimm family. Hi Grimms, if you're watching. I don't really,
Grimms and Halpins.
Grimms and Halpins. I mean, the math is like, it's just exponential. It's like 17 times 17 times, you know, where it's. Because isn't it like 17 kids or something? Like they had like 17 kids.
Oh, yeah, a piece. I mean, both Halpin and Grimm.
Yeah.
And they've had, you know, they're into great-great-grandchildren now.
Yeah.
And the Haggards, there were a lot of them.
So, I mean, that's like a couple generations down the line, and we're talking cities of these people, you know?
See, basically, ladies and gentlemen, if you're a traditional Catholic and you live in LA, and your children don't move, and your grandchildren don't move, sooner or later you're going to be related to either or both Halpin and Grimm families. And that's just the way it is. And I'm all for it. I'm glad. You know, I mean, it's neither are unattractive clans.
Right.
They don't. Neither one produces ugly people.
Right. Which is good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very good.
All right. Okay, so that's it for the memes. Are you ready for the state of the week?
Woo! Hysteria, confusion, and distress. But no, yes, of course I am. What state is it?
North Carolina.
Oh, lordy. I loves me some North Carolina. Well, we're going to go east to west. in the
Okay.
great state of North Carolina. Now, North Carolina, ladies and gentlemen, oddly enough, was born alongside South Carolina in the great former colony of, you guessed it, Carolina. But in 1712, because their settlement patterns were quite different, they were separated. And so from that time to this, North Carolina, looking south to their esteemed cousins in Charleston, and looking north to the first families of Virginia, North Carolina has described itself as a valley of humility between two mountains of conceit. Natives of the state are called Tar Heels. There are many explanations for why it's called that, but I don't know any that really fit. So we'll not try to figure it out. Now, if you go to the far east of North Carolina, you will find yourself in the Grand Banks. And the natives of the Grand Banks, not unlike natives of the islands dotting the Atlantic coast in other states, have a very strange dialect, a strange accent that's very, very close, very much descended from the original English settlers. And as a result, one of the nicknames for those folk on the Grand Banks of the Outer Banks, rather, of North Carolina, not the Grand Banks, the Outer Banks, is hoy-toiters, because they talk about the hoy-toid.
Oh, the high tide.
No, the hoy-toid. So they call them hoy-toiters. Not to be confused with the Guinea men of Gloucester, just north of Virginia. Now, a little bit further inland from the Grand Banks, and you will find yourself at Roanoke Island, home of the unsuccessful lost colony of Sir Walter Raleigh, the lost colony of Roanoke, the great initial mystery of English settlement. When the relief ship came back, there was nobody left, and somebody had carved on a tree the word Croatoan, which is the name of a local Indian tribe. And with the colony vanished the first English child born in what are now the United States, a girl called Virginia Dare. Nobody knows what happened to the lost colony. The Croatan Indians nearby claim that they, in fact, found refuge with them. And a number of the last names amongst those folk are the last names that we remember from the lost colony, but nobody really knows for sure. However, North Carolina, moving in a little inland, you've got in the far northeast of the state a bustling and beautiful little town called Edenton. And all along the eastern shore, the eastern coast of North Carolina, you've got lovely little colonial era towns. Edenton was the site of the so-called Edenton Tea Party that took place as a protest against the British East India Tea. You go further south, you go to one of my favorite places in North Carolina, and that is the former colonial capital at New Bern. And there, rebuilt in the 50s, is Tryon's Palace, a recreation of the colonial palace of Governor Tryon, who was the penultimate royal governor of North Carolina. It's a wonderful place. I visited it, love it. It's great. Nearby is Christ Episcopal Church, which the buildings, I think, the 1830s, but the parish goes back to colonial days. They've got the requisite Queen Anne silver, the chalice and flagon and all that given by the Queen. And then further south, you've got Wilmington, which is the major port in North Carolina, renowned for battles during the Civil War. St. Mary's Basilica is there, and it's really really a wonderful place. When you go further west, and you come to the section, the Piedmont in Virginia, that same area, the upland is called, Raleigh, Fayetteville, Charlotte, all of them outposts of the New South, but a lot of Confederate traditions and museums and so forth. But in Fayetteville, in that area, You've also got memories of the Scots settlers, even more the further west in Grandfather Mountain, where they have the great Scottish games every year. The Scots were settled in North Carolina, the Scottish Highlanders, after Culloden, and they swore allegiance to the king and were loyalists in the Revolution. One of the places in western North Carolina that stands out in my mind is a place called the House in the Horseshoe, which was a Revolutionary War era battleground, an interesting place. Oh, by the way, I completely forgot, with Fayetteville, you've also got Fort Bragg, which is the home of several military museums and an interesting place. And near there is the fabulous town of Dunn, North Carolina, with Sacred Heart Church, which in days gone by had the Tridentine Mass and all sorts of other wonderful things. I don't know what it's like now. Go further west, and you will come at last to the Appalachians and the great town of Asheville, North Carolina. There you will find the biggest house in the United States, Biltmore, which is owned by a branch of the Vanderbilt family, but is open to the public. You'll also find in Asheville the great Basilica of St. Lawrence, which is just gorgeous, and the Episcopal Church, which is likewise gorgeous. These were built by Vanderbilt for his Catholic and Anglican workers that he brought down to work on his house. There's also Belmont Abbey. I forgot that, but I mentioned it. Benedictine Abbey, the center of the state, North Center, the center west. Anyway, quite a beautiful place. And there you have the state of North Carolina. Now, if you go from Asheville and you cross the mountains, you go find yourself in Tennessee. Now, I don't want to go into Tennessee, that's for another day, but I'll just mention that if you do that, the other side of the mountain is Dollywood.
Dollywood?
Dollywood.
What is that?
That is Dolly Parton's answer to Disneyland.
Oh. What not? Oh.
Dollywood.
I don't know. I don't know what you're saying. Is that an actual place?
Yeah. It's a big amusement park and so forth that Dolly Parton put together. And it's in her hometown of Pigeon Forge, Tennessee.
I see Pigeon Forge.
The Pigeon Forge, yeah, sorry.
Okay. Huh.
Pigeon Forge, Tennessee.
Is it me or did you not mention anything in Charlotte?
No, I didn't mention anything in Charlotte, but there's a good deal to see. Saints Peter and Paul, Catholic and Episcopal churches, of course. Charlotte was named, interestingly enough, after Queen Charlotte, the wife of George III, and it is the seat of Mecklenburg County, so called because she was Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz. The colonial heritage is very strong in North Carolina, the way it is all along the northern seaboard, the eastern seaboard. And they have their own local portions of the King's Highway, the great road that ran all the way from Portland, Maine to St. Augustine, Florida. It ran through North Carolina, obviously. And then I also left out the two former colonial capitals before New Bern of Bristol and Bath. And Bristol is sort of a deserted place. Bath is still a going concern. But it's a charming state. And of course, it was also the location of your favorite town.
Yeah. What, Indian Trail? I don't know. What?
Mayberry, North Carolina.
A
home to Andy Taylor, the sheriff.
Excuse me?
The Andy Griffith Show.
Oh.
It was set in the fictional town of Mayberry, North Carolina, with Aunt Bee and Opie and all the rest. And of course, there was the county seat of Mount Pilot. And that was North Carolina. There was North Carolina if you're from, Southern California. I'll have you know that the side, in the beginning of the Andy Taylor show, the Andy Griffith show, where you see Sheriff Taylor and little Opie walking there by the lake.
Yeah.
That lake's in the San Fernando Valley, son.
All
What do
right.
you think of that?
That's amazing. Isn't that
And
amazing how they could transport that to San Fernando Valley?
everything was back in the valley in them days.
Wow.
Didn't matter if it was King Arthur's, Brett, all San Fernando Valley.
Just looking at a couple of these other things in North Carolina. Is there anything in Winston-Salem? For some reason,
Yes, there is. In Salem, the Salem part of Winston-Salem is a Moravian settlement, which was settled by members of the Moravian Church from Central Europe, and is still a big Moravian thing. They're best known at Easter time for their music, and they have a sort of sacramental service, which consists of coffee and buns.
Okay.
It's true, not a joke. Coffee and buns.
Interesting.
Well, it's a sign of fellowship, a love feast, it's called.
And I guess the last thing would just be, what about Raleigh?
Well, Raleigh is the state capital. It's got some interesting museums and the Capitol building, of course. Raleigh is, as in every state, it's where all the worst decisions are made. Pretty cathedral, Catholic cathedral. But Raleigh, it's a pleasant enough place.
Yeah.
But I love New Bern. I would say New Bern is my favorite town in North Carolina.
Interesting. All right. So New Bern. Okay, so New Bern, that's back east then, by the coast. Okay. That's a really small town.
Yeah, it's a lovely place. I really like New Bern. Wilmington has St. Mary's Basilica, and it's a big town. There's a big port, and then south of Wilmington is Fort Fisher and places like that, where were fought over in the Civil War. But I have to say, though, having finished this, in response to last week's show, we got a note from the Reverend Mr. Sean McMahon, or McMahon, I don't know how he says it, of the Indian Baptist Church, as in American Indian, in Gay Head, which is the Indian reservation going back to colonial times on Martha's Vineyard. And he said that Martha's Vineyard deserved to be treated separately from Massachusetts because of its history of separatism. And it's come into the news because, as everyone knows, Governor DeSantis of Florida shipped a number of refugees into Martha's Vineyard.
Do you mean Maryland?
No, Martha's Vineyard is in Massachusetts.
Well, we didn't cover Massachusetts yet.
I know, but that was his. He's a man of the cloth, and he ministers to the Mashpee Indians. It's enough for me. The Wampanoags, I mean to say. The Mashpees are in Cape Cod. They're also Wampanoags. Two different reservations. Okay?
Okay.
Gay Head is on Martha's Vineyard. Mashpee is on Cape Cod. But they are both Wampanoag. King Philip's tribe.
Got it.
All right. So the thing about Martha's Vineyard, and the reason why the refugees were sent there, is simply because it is a home for many very wealthy people, a summer home, including people like President Obama. Hence the joke when Governor DeSantis started sending the refugees up there. There was a meme that appeared with President Obama saying, "We're going to build a wall around Martha's Vineyard, and Florida's going to pay for it." But to be fair, and I can't emphasize this enough, ladies and gentlemen, apart from the fact that Mr. Rogers also used to summer on Martha's Vineyard, when it comes to places like Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, and once upon a time places like Bar Harbor, Maine, in other words, any resort from Stamford, Connecticut to Lubec, Maine, that is the whole run of the New England coast, remember, you cannot blame the year-rounders for what the summer people do. It's very important to understand that. Martha's Vineyard is not to be blamed for whatever the people who are just summer people do. They're just summer people. The rest of the year, the people in places like that have to make a living. And nowhere is this truer than Gayhead, where, in fact, the Indians were renowned for a long time for pottery. Gayhead pottery was quite famous, and for all I know, still is. I hope so. The other thing that's interesting about Martha's Vineyard is that legally, it is Dukes County. Now you think, well, gee, Dukes County is it named after the TV show Dukes of Hazzard? No. No, 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 no. It was named after the future the future James II, King of England, Scotland, and Ireland, the Duke of York, after whom New York was named. Here's the fun part. Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, and the Elizabeth Islands were originally not part of Massachusetts. They were part of New York, the province of New York. And just as Brooklyn is Kings County, named after Charles II, Queens is Queens County, named after his wife, Elizabeth of Braganza. Well, Dukes County, then including Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, and the Elizabeth Islands, was Dukes County, named after James II to be the brother of Charles II. So in other words, when you look at Martha's Vineyard, you look at Dukes Island, know that historically, colonial times, for a while, they were much more closely related to New York than they were to Massachusetts. So now you know. And Nantucket was big for whaling. And the terribly filthy Limerick, the old man from Nantucket.
I see. Okay, well, thank you for
Which
mentioning...
has one clean version that I know.
Okay.
There was an old man from Nantucket who kept all his money in a bucket. His daughter, named Nan, ran off with a man. And as for the bucket, Nantucket.
Amazing. Thank you for that, Charles.
Look, this is Constitution Day. It's Citizenship Day. I am helping acquaint you with elements of Americana with which you obviously were not familiar.
Yes, and I thank you for it. I thank you for doing that. All right.
This is star-spangled, in my humble opinion.
Okay. All right. Time for the questions.
Oh, we'll put them off as long as we can, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
And that kind of delay is what?
A bozo no-no.
Exactly. That's right. It's a big fat bozo no-no. So let's get on with the questions.
All right. Question from Oscar, who says, "Hello, gentlemen. I recently talked to a friend who had spent a few years of his life in Germany. Said that the Germans almost saw themselves as the law, that they were a bit nosy. This made me think of an interview from a few months ago where Mr. Coulombe talked about the differences between Catholic countries and Protestant countries. Can Mr. Coulombe explain why Catholic peoples are more individualist and pains to rule, while Protestants are compromisers and conformists? Can he also explain the difference between being an individual and of a strong character in the context of a Catholic nation, and how in America everyone says they are free thinkers, but this may or may not be so? If he can do this, then please do."
Well, I can. The Catholic mind, whether or not it has the Catholic faith, whether or not it's retained it, tends to seek the absolute. Now, the absolute may not be objectively true, but they seek the absolute. And they, as a rule, compromise is not considered a good thing, not when you're seeking absolute truth. And that basic orientation affects everything. Especially, I mean, it's even worse if you have that point of view and you don't have the faith, because then there's absolutely no reason to compromise at all. So the result is that you get extremely chaotic political systems. and you have people who are total individualists to the point of being anarchical, because they can only really accept a government and its laws if they seem demonstrably true. And if not, then there's something to be gotten around or opposed. That does not make for an easy journey. But with the Protestants, on the other hand, absolute truth is really not all that essential, because truth by its nature is not absolute. Private judgment means that your truth, I mean, when I say it means this, I mean it in a practical sense. The results of private judgment are that what the Holy Ghost tells you is true for you. What he tells me is true. So you have your truth, I have my truth. And we have to somehow get along despite having different truths. So from the very get-go, compromise becomes an essential and a virtuous thing, in fact, since who can say whether or not the Holy Ghost is really informing me than he is you? And as a result, Protestant peoples get along more easily with one another as a rule, and as a rule, they're easier to govern. Now, this, as far as American free thinking goes, everyone's free to think whatever he likes or not. And until the advent of wokery, it really did not matter what one thought, as long as one conformed within certain boundaries. And that's simply the way we were. Wokery has changed that to some degree, however. It's almost the wokery denies there's any absolute truth at all, which is different. And so it ends up destroying everything. Or there is an absolute, but the absolute is there are no absolutes, which is itself an absolute. But, don't look for sanity. That would be a BOZO no-no, too. I can see it now. I can see you demanding of some woke professor in some ridiculous university. What does that even mean, professor? That was a BOZO no-no.
It's interesting. Oscar says in America, everyone says they are free thinkers. That's like it would be strange if everyone regarded themselves as, we're a country of sheep.
Well, nobody's going to say that, no matter how true it is. I mean, we're just... my response to my masters is meh, meh. No one's going to say that, no matter how true it is. And you'll be happy to know that the city of Arcadia gave out its first free speech award.
Yeah? Who won?
You really want to know?
Yes, I do.
Tyrone.
Yeah. All right.
You know why?
Why?
Everybody else dropped out of the contest.
Oh, I wonder why.
You know who the judge was?
Officer Clancy?
Chief Clancy.
Chief Clancy.
Keep a civil tongue in your head. Chief Clancy now. Yeah, you sure? Yeah, I would if I were you. Let's just say that the newly elevated chief is very, very conscious of his place in the world. But there's good news on that front, too. Do you realize that in the month and a half that he's been chief of police in Arcadia, crime has dropped to virtually nothing?
Yes.
But wait, there's more. The Arcadia Weekly, you remember they used to run those nasty articles about police corruption and so on in Arcadia?
That's right.
They don't do it anymore.
I wonder why.
Well, they did run a banner headline saying that Chief Clancy had cleaned up the force.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we don't need to do articles on that anymore. That makes sense, actually. That's
of course.
I mean, there's nothing to report.
No. when the police force is clean as a whistle, what's to be said about it? But unfortunately, Dan Dwyer, the reporter that did that beat, he retired.
Yeah.
And he was kind of young too. He was only 32. But they had a retirement party for him at the police station, and then he left. I think. I mean, I didn't see him go, but I guess he left.
Okay. Okay, Charles. Well,
I
let's.
mean, I'm not saying he stayed. I haven't seen him anyway. But they said it was a retire. That's what office Chief Clancy told me that they were having a retirement party for Dennis Dwyer. I said he's only 32. And his response was, and what a fine, fine reporter he's been to think he's made enough money to retire at such an early age.
All right, Charles. Let's leave it at that for our friends.
All right.
I'm
I'm just saying.
All right.
It's Constitution Day, for heaven's sake.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I just thought I'd throw it out there.
All right. Question from Hoosier Jacobite. I would like.
I don't know. Who is he?
Hoosier, as in Indiana Hoosiers.
I got it.
Okay.
It's one of their jokes, is Hoosier Daddy. Get it? Hoosier Jacobite, Hoosier Daddy. Oh, forget it. Move along now. Nothing to see here. Move along.
He says,
you're all right. Move along.
I would like for Mr. Coulombe to please talk about the Principality of Andorra, its history, culture, the church there, and of course, its unique monarchy. Or would it be a diarchy? And how did this develop during the various times of revolution and changing government in France?
Well, it's a very good question. The co-principality of Andorra, as it's officially called, sits in the Pyrenees Mountains between France and Spain. Its unique constitution comes all the way down from Charlemagne, because the area was disputed between the Bishop of Urgell in Spain and the Count of Urgell. And the Count and the Bishop fought over, I don't know if they fought, militarily, but they quarreled over who was the rightful liege lord. So Charlemagne found for both of them, and it became divided between them, the responsibility. So it became the co-principality. Well, eventually, the Counts of Urgell died out, and their heiress married the Counts of Foix, who, in turn, eventually married into the House of Bourbon, and the Bourbons became the kings of France. And so, from that time on, the two co-princes were the Bishop of Urgell still, and the King of France. But then you had the French Revolution, and although Andorra was in fact occupied, it nevertheless retained its independence one way and another, and the head of state of France retained the co-principality with the bishop. So Napoleon was co-prince. The restored kings Louis XVIII and Charles X were co-princes with the bishop. Napoleon III, Emperor of the French, was co-prince. And then after him, each of the presidents of France down to the present have been co-princes of Andorra with the bishop. They get tribute every year, which in the bishop's case, the French president only gets a little bit of cash. The Spanish bishop gets a little cash and some chickens and goats and cheeses and things. Every year is feudal. It's a feudal arrangement. Nevertheless, in Andorra la Vella, the capital, they have their own government that meets, and in days gone by used to sell titles of nobility. The language is Catalan. The people are Catholic for the most part. And they did make a bit of money in days gone by, and perhaps now, I don't know, by selling citizenships as well. If you had a lot of money, you could become a citizen of Andorra. And it's a neat little country there between France and Spain, doing its own thing, being its own self. and not really bothering too much about the rest of the world.
77,000 people. Okay, so that's smaller than Liechtenstein and Luxembourg, I think. That's even,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
a dinky place.
All right. Great. Let's see.
Because of their constitutional connection to Charlemagne, the name of their national anthem is Charlemagne our Father.
All right. Jacobite also says, while on the subject of small European countries, would the esteemed monarchist Mr. Coulombe be so kind as to give a similar overview of the most serene Republic of San Marino?
All right. Well, it's located in the San Gabriel Valley of Los Angeles County. It's very close to our...
No, not that San Marino.
Oh, I was about to say it's got old money. The Colonial Kitchen.
Yeah, your favorite spot.
Yes, Julien's. Yeah, San Marino's a lovely town, but that's not the one he wants. He wants the one near Rimini, Italy, in the up in the mountains there. San Marino was actually founded by a saint who, strangely enough, was called Saint Marinus, and he was a stone cutter from Dalmatia. He sought refuge there on Monte Titano during the fall of the Roman Empire, and his little settlement there was the root, really, of it was really the root of San Marino, the Republic of San Marino. It's ruled by its executives are two captains general who were elected by its council. During the 50s, it actually had a communist government. It was the only communist government outside the Iron Curtain. It was occupied. It's been independent for hundreds of years. The last time it was occupied was by papal forces under Cardinal Alberoni, and then the Pope ordered him to pull out because of the ancientness of its constitution. It too used to sell titles of nobility and citizenships. I don't know if it still does, but they used to. The most serene Republic of San Marino is one of the 5 little countries of Europe, which include Andorra, San Marino, Monaco, Liechtenstein, and Luxembourg, which is the biggest of them all. Now, you might include 2 other tinies. One is smaller than all the rest, the Vatican. And then smaller still is the Sovereign Order of Malta, which has an even tinier patch of independent ground. But those are your dinky states in Europe.
That's amazing that it's retained its sovereignty kind of just right as like a little dot in the Italian peninsula, you know?
Yeah, it's the only one of the Italian states that have survived at the present, just as Liechtenstein
What's
is
the
the only one
reason
of the
for
German
that?
states.
Like, how does that happen? Like, oh, well, you know what? We'll leave everything else other than this tiny dot.
It's up in the mountains, and the people once upon a time were very fierce fighters, and it just wasn't worth it.
I have to say, whenever you're talking about a location, whether it's state of the week or these principalities, I am looking at Google Maps in tandem with your explanation, and I have to say this castle on San Marino is probably it's one of the most dramatic castles I've seen. It's on this hill, or this mountain, and the view
Monte
is
Titano.
absolutely unbelievable. It's almost, the drop is so steep, it almost makes you think of of Gondor, of Minas Tirith, you know?
Well, see, that's the thing. I mean, you would have had a hard time taking it. And
Yeah.
that was the point. Remember, St. Marinos went up there to seek refuge. And that's what it's been ever since. It's been a refuge. Kind of like the San Marino of the San Gabriel Valley has been a refuge for old money from LA. You know, when Hancock Park got filled up with nouveau riches, they moved to San Marino.
Wow. Okay.
And the colonial kitchen.
All right. Micah has 3 questions.
Oh, all
First,
right.
first question. He says, on behalf of the Monarchist of America cast, in a full English breakfast is served with baked beans. Are baked beans a valid breakfast food?
Only if they're served as part of an English breakfast. You serve me baked beans with a breakfast burrito, and I'll throw it back at you.
Yeah, how did that happen?
English have interesting tastes.
Interesting.
And it actually works as part of an English breakfast. But I really would not. It just the mixture of flavors works well. Remember what you've got in a full fry. A fry up, as the English, Scots, and Irish call their breakfasts. You've got sausage, bacon, ham, eggs, or sausage and bacon anyway. Sometimes blood pudding, mushrooms, fried eggs, toast, beans, and altogether, sometimes a tomato if you're into that kind of thing. And altogether, it works.
Interesting. Okay,
It's pretty filling too.
So it is a valid breakfast
in the right context.
Okay.
You hand me baked beans and orange juice, and you'll get the right back.
All right. Who do you believe should be crowned king or queen of America? Wow.
Who do I believe has been, is, or should be?
Should be.
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Well, I'm sort of, shall we say, flexible on the issue. Because I think before a successful monarchy could be established here, there'd have to be a lot of changes in the people themselves. But if you were looking for dynastic right, then I would say there are 2 candidates. One, Franz von Bayern, the heir of the Stuart claims, and then whose great nephew, Joseph Wenzel of Liechtenstein, will one day combine in himself his father's descent from the French and Spanish Bourbons, who founded the western and central parts of our country, and through his mother, the Jacobite claims, which accounts for the eastern foundations of our country. So that's one possible thing, and I explored that in the Star Spangled Crown quite thoroughly. But then the other possibility, of course, is His Majesty King Charles III. Under that scenario, I suppose we would have a Governor General like Canada sitting in the White House. But to be honest with you, unlike my mythical monarchy in Star Spangled Crown, my fictional monarchy, the problem, in my humble estimation, with the British, Canadian, Australian, New Zealand, etc. style of monarchy is that it's not monarchical enough. The bane of modern governance is the political class. And to be effective, a monarch has to have not just authority, but sufficient power to restrain the political class, and smack them on the nose when they do bad touch. So, looking at the state that Canada, Australia, and New Zealand were in during COVID, as opposed to the position we were in, I don't know that an all-powerful Westminster Parliament sitting in place of Congress and a Governor General would be, as things stand now, the best thing for the United States. If, on the other hand, if the monarchy in Great Britain, which is, after all, the declawed monarchy in Great Britain is as much a product of the American Revolution as the Constitution is. As Eric Nelson put it very well, when the smoke cleared, on one side of the water, meaning ours, you would have a monarchy without a king. And on the other, you'd have a king without a monarchy. And that's really the basic problem. So I think in order for an American king to operate properly, he would have to have sufficient powers to be able to keep our ever hungry, greedy politicians at bay. But see, that too would also require a population who understood that the political classes, while they do things that they're not capable of doing, do not represent them. They represent the great interests, which is true of every land and clime. The vast majority of people at any given moment are not really represented. I mean that in a accepting, realistic kind of way.
All right, final question for this episode.
All right.
What should an American monarch do to avoid the fates of Charles I, Louis XVI, and Nicholas II?
Shoot all the media people. But beyond that, well, what he would need to do is several things. Firstly, he would have to build up a class of people who are very loyal to him. He would, I mean, the media and academia would definitely have to be purged one way or the other. I don't recommend shooting them all, of course, but certainly defunding and removing would be very, very important. I mean, and not just for a monarchy. I mean, any decent government to function in our country is one day going to have to deal with the media and academia. There's just no way around it. They have become such corrupt purveyors of garbage and yet retain such influence that they really need to be either renovated or hemmed in.
How do you do that?
Oh, that's a very good question. It's a very hard question. I think part of the one way you could do it is to link federal funding, as far as academia goes, to the ideology or lack thereof of a faculty of a given institution.
How do you prove ideology?
By their writings, by what they teach.
I mean, but like, how do you vet that? I mean, you just have a person that
You look at what they write. Publish or perish, remember. Academics got to generate a lot of stuff. So you look at what they write. And if what they write is nice and calming, well, then they can start their own school, or their school doesn't need federal funding. Imagine Harvard with no federal funding. Too bad, so sad. With media, of course, that may be a problem that's solving itself, because media, as we've known it, is dying. But media is very, very problematic. I know that if I were President Trump, when he was being abused by the media, I would have cut him off as far as information goes. Those White House press conferences and release of it, not a penny, nothing. You're so smart, you figure it out on your own. You're not getting anything out of me. Bye-bye, chump. I don't need to be insulted.
What does free press mean?
It's very, very much like a street lamp lighter. It's an archaic thing. What? No, I mean, there is no free press in our country, in the sense of, and to one degree there never has been or could be, because human beings are always opinionated. But the idea of a free press that seeks out truth without being beholden to any party in the state, that's the notion of a free press. And it is something we have not had for a very long time. I mean, you pick up, not that people read them anymore, but you pick up any major newspaper, and I guarantee you'll have a hard time separating the opinion page from news coverage. Well, that's not a free press.
What I don't understand is why no single media entity that I know of doesn't do that. Because I feel like there's a huge demand for just reporting news without editorializing?
Well, they don't do it, I suppose, because their bottom line is not affected by their being ideological whores.
Hmm.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I don't, judge. You know why I don't judge?
Um, because I have no idea why.
Oh, come on. You know why I don't judge. What would it be if I judged?
You judge not
It would,
lest you be judged, or I don't
no, it
know.
would be a bozo no-no.
Oh, a bozo no. Yeah, okay, so
It's a
that's why you don't
bozo
judge.
no-no. I don't judge. It would be a bozo no-no.
Of course,
What?
of course, of
Of
course.
course,
That's
it's a
my mistake,
bozo
Charles. I'm
no-no.
sorry.
Yes,
Uh,
good. And you know what? If I were president of the United States and you asked me a searching question that was obviously biased, you know what my response would be?
that's a bozo no.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hmm.
when you figure how many bozos are in Washington, what?
All right. So I feel like we've answered that question. I guess that's pretty much it. Any
Well,
closing thoughts on this one, Charles?
well, yeah. I mean, obviously, the very rise of American monarchism in the past several years is a measure of how many people have lost faith in the system. And it's ironic we're having this conversation on Constitution Day. And I have to say that, I find my own emotions are kind of wrapped up here because I have been actively or passively a monarchist as far back as I can remember, really. I mean, when I first read about the revolution, I instinctively sided with the loyalists. Uh, Oddly enough, not the British so much per se, but the loyalists, because these were people who were simply doing what they'd always done with the loyalties they'd always had. And all of a sudden, the better people decided that they were going to put together a government, and you better swear allegiance to it or you're a traitor. I resented that profoundly in a young boy putting himself back into the past. You know, you're going to come along and tell me that I'm no longer that the allegiance I swore to the king is no good anymore, and I'm supposed to swear allegiance to you. What are you that I would swear allegiance to, as opposed to the king? That's really the way it hit me. The the loyalists, and of course, as I got older, I found about the Quebec Act and all this as a early teenagers on 11 and 12, and that it
Y-
all,
that's a very, I feel like that's a very human approach to it, because obviously that's emotionally what happens, or
yeah.
what happened. But it's interesting in that the way, the perspective of history textbooks, they don't cover that angle, at least not to my knowledge. I've never seen it run in that
Well, I mean,
manner.
they don't, because the thing is, every revolution has to constantly justify itself. Because if it doesn't, why does it exist? And the heirs of that revolution, however many years may go by, have to continually justify it. And that means you've got to constantly tell yourself and tell your subjects over and over that the old regime was terrible. But what if that isn't true? And what if what replaced it wasn't better? That that is a question that haunts the imagination and the minds to the degree they have them, not just of revolutionaries, but of their inheritors. I mean, there was a reason why, up until relatively recent, the past 20 years, virtually every country in Europe that had become a republic had a law banning members of the royal family from setting foot on their own soil.
Oh, because of the impact it would have.
Because of the impact. They also would have laws make it illegal to agitate for, for any other form of government. Now, of course, there's an internal problem with that. Because if you have a revolution, you're saying that people have the right to overturn their kind of government. But if you then say, well, no, you can't go back to the old form of government or do anything else. We came in and you have to stick with us. Well, really? So let me get this straight. The monarchy justifies itself as being by the grace of God. Other forms of government might justify themselves through appeals to the working class or race or nation or this or that. What is it exactly you appeal to? And why is it that all of these other appeals are inferior to yours? That's not a question that can be answered. So the way you deal with it is to make it illegal to ask it. It becomes, what does it become?
A bozo no.
Exactly. It becomes a bozo no.
Sorry,
And
it was it was such a sharp, poignant part. It was hard to jump back into bozo no.
but it's fitting. It actually fits. And if you tell me that asking why the republic was better than the monarchy, knowing you're not going to have an answer, if your response to me is that's a bozo no, do you know what my response as a monarchist will be?
What?
Cram it, Clowny.
Oh.
But no, seriously, all joking aside for a moment, this is the inherent instability of revolution because it cannot, within its own terms, it can't really justify its permanence because it was built on overthrowing another order. So why would it be wrong for someone else to do the same thing? For some other reason they find absolutely binding.
Right.
You know, if you read the Declaration of Independence, starting out with when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for the people of one nation to dissolve the ties that bound them to those of another. Who decides that? And how do you define people or nation? Remember that our second Civil War was fought over this very question. If the king and those Americans loyal to him believed that the secession of the 13 colonies was wrong, how did the government founded by those colonies have the moral right to say that these southern states could not secede, could not repeat what it was? Why could they not in 1860 repeat what was done in 1776? And that was a question that could only be answered through bloodshed. Because there was no other answer, unless you were to allow the Union to break into two. And so we had the bloodiest war that this country ever fought, bloodier than all the other wars we've been involved in combined. And so many young Americans had to die on both sides for the sake of the glorious Union. But what made the Union glorious? Now, you could make an argument simply from nationality, if you liked, that we were a nation. But then again, you fall back on, and what gave us the right to break from Britain? Well, the majority were in favor of it. Well, A, that's more than debatable. It's not true. And B, it's likelier that a majority of Southerners wanted to secede from the Union than that a majority of Americans wanted to secede from the Empire. And yet, in with and under all of this stuff, you've got this moralizing. And that, I have never been able to see how, if you accept the secession of the 13 colonies of the empire, with all the bloodshed it required, with all the harassment of those loyal to the old regime, if you accept that that was okay and worthwhile, I do not see how you could say it was wrong for the southern states to secede. On the other hand, if you do say it was wrong for the southern states to secede, I don't see how you can say it was right for the 13 colonies to do so. I've never understood that. And you see what makes it all the more bizarre for me is that my native state, the glorious state of New York, which of course originally included Dukes County, meaning Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, and the Elizabeth Islands. My native state only signed the Constitution on the proviso that it could secede if they didn't like the way it turned out.
You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave.
Yeah, welcome to the Hotel America. So it's this kind of question that dogs the question of republic versus monarchy. Setting the United States aside and looking at Latin America, independence from Spain has been one horror after another. And the peoples of Latin America have unconsciously sought a replacement for the king, and all they've come up with is one caudillo after another. In Europe, same. There is not a single republic in Europe that you could point to and honestly say that it's better governed than it was under its monarch. Not one. And even monarchies that I would not have wanted to live under, like the Ottoman Sultan or the Qing dynasty in China, none of them were ever replaced by anything better. Never. Unless you call Red China and Ataturk's Turkey better, which, good luck you. So, you know, this stuff is fraught with drivel that falls apart if you just think about it. And now, did I mention Edward von Habsburg's tweet on the show?
No, you did not. That was before.
Well, it's a very good tweet. You can go on Twitter if you go on Twitter, but yeah, if you go on Twitter, you'll get this. What he does is he shows Edward von Habsburg, the Hungarian ambassador to the Holy See, has a picture of the obsequies of the coffin of Queen Elizabeth in Westminster with the guards around it. And then next to it is a picture of these tons of people of all ages and ethnicities waiting in queue to go by. And this is what he says. I tell you why people worldwide are so deeply touched by what is happening in London these days. Because it is the ultimate antithesis to the unhinged / artificial / woke world we have to live in. It's like waking up, and the people are doing it. Astonishing. But it's true. I think that in a very, very strange way, the both the Ukrainian invasion by Russia, the death of the Queen and the accession of the King, everything that's going on right now is forcing people to look very carefully at who governs them, why they're governed this way, what the point is. And if you look at Christian European monarchy, the fact is, you compare it to anything else, and it comes out looking better. It's just the way it is. In America, we are kind of exceptional, but the things that have made us better than most, for a long time anyway, were precisely those monarchical elements we retained. Things like the Senate and the Electoral College, which was a direct steal from the Holy Roman Empire.
In the words of Mr. Carson in Downton Abbey, monarchy is the lifeblood of Europe.
Well, he was right. And unfortunately, because it's been cut off for most of Europe, the lifeblood of Europe is kind of, let's say, defective right now, filled with poisons and diseases and disgusting stuff and blood cancer and blood warts and bloodworms and blood additives and bad blood.
Okay, we got it. Now we got
blood.
bad blood. Now we got problems, and I don't think we can solve them. Okay?
No, we can't. Not without
Band-Aids
help.
don't fix bullet holes.
No,
They
they
say
don't.
sorry just for show. You live like that, you live with ghosts.
That was deep.
Yeah, it's deep.
And but seriously, we are in a very strange place in history right now. And I tell you, I say this on Constitution Day. I have never loved my country so much as I do at this moment, when she's ruled by such utter morons. I've never loved Europe more than I have at this moment, when I've seen the damage in Ukraine. I look at Emperor Karl, I look at Nicholas II, I look at Louis XVI, I look at Charles I, and I think of what can be. You know, today I was at the great Abbey of Heiligenkreuz, which has treasured its big chunk of the cross since the 1100s. And it's been in continuous function since then. One of the few European abbeys that has that distinction. And it just reminded me of the greatness of Christian European culture, not just in the mother continent, but across the seas. I mean, our own country is part of it, and Russia is part of it, and Argentina is part of it, and Australia is part of it. And there are parts of India and Malaysia and the Pacific Islands and Africa that are part of it. You know, being a European is not a matter of DNA. It's a matter of religion and culture. And the sooner that's understood, the saner people will be, I think, in this area. But why should they be? Because in today's world, to think bad thoughts is
a BOZO no-no.
That's right. And what do we never do, people? A BOZO no-no. But I hate to say this, it is midnight here in the old continent.
Yep, we should be closing up.
We should, but I'm reminded when President Reagan was running the first time, his motto was, "It's morning in America." Well, about 10 years later, somebody was running for a write-in thing in California for what he called the National Nihilist Party. Nihilist, nihilist. You know what that is. It's against everything.
Yeah.
And you know what their motto was?
What?
Remembering Reagan's "It's Morning in America." The National Nihilist Party's motto was, "It's midnight in America. Get down and stay down."
Wow.
Reminds me of the humorist is a Southerner. I forget his name, but I remember the titles of two of his books. One was "Elvis is Dead and I Don't Feel So Good Myself." And the other was "Shoot Low, Boys. They're riding Shetland ponies."
Wow.
I don't know what that has to do with anything, but as you know, I never mind dragging in the irrelevant.
All right. That'll do it for this episode. Remember, if it's Monday
It's off the menu.
and the soul you save,
May be your own.
see you next week.
God bless all.